Let's head to the little town of Perfection, Nevada to see what the hell's going on. Let's do it. Hey, welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone's doing well out there. And before we get started on this review today, I would like to ask you to hit the like button for me, hit the subscribe button, and you can share this video. I greatly would appreciate that. Now we're on to the review portion. Today we're going to talk about a little creature feature called Tremors. This film came out January 19th of 1990. Actually got delayed. It was supposed to come out in 89, and Universal pushed it back. And back then, unfortunately, January and February considered a dumping grounds. That's where films went to die. They weren't expected to do a whole lot. Now, today it's kind of changed. There's been plenty of films that have had great success in January and February. But back then, these were like the dead winter months, and this is where films went to die. This came out January 19th of 1990. It's rated PG-13. Now, originally it got a rated R, but it wasn't because of gore. It was because of too many F-bombs. And they cut those out, and they changed a word around to something else. Now, there's one F-bomb still left in the film, and it's the scene where Val and Earl are getting chased through the desert by one of these things. They don't know what it is yet, and they jump into the canal, and it hits the wall and dies. And then Val, being happy, points at it and goes, "Fuck you!" And that's the only F-bomb still left in the film. Now, this film doesn't need all those F-bombs anyway. It's still totally enjoyable, and you don't need it. This movie's only an hour and 36 minutes long, had a budget of $11 million, and it made 16.6 upon release. Now, this film was the first theatrical film from Ron Underwood. He directed this film. He went on to direct City Slickers the next year after this. Until this point, he'd only directed mainly just TV films. This was his first theatrical film. Now, in this film, we have a great cast. We have Kevin Bacon as Valentine, or Val as they call him during the film. The great Fred Ward. I love Fred Ward as a character actor. And he plays Earl in this film, and they're buddies. They're like best friends. They live in a trailer together in this little town of Perfection, population 14, Perfection, Nevada. And their banter back and forth is fantastic. They play off each other really, really well, and they're our leads, and they drive the film forward. Finn Carter plays Rhonda. She's a college student who was sent out into this area to monitor seismographs for his university. We also got Michael Gross as Bert Gummer, this survivalist, with his wife, played by Reba McEntire, Heather, and this is Reba McEntire's first film. And they played survivalists in this film, but Michael Gross, actually, the day before he started filming this film, he filmed his final episode of Family Ties, and he went right on to start filming this film. I thought that was pretty cool. And the great Victor Wong, who sadly isn't with us anymore, plays Walter Chang, and he owns the general store in town, basically the only business open in this little town. But literally, his general store is their whole downtown. And there's a house across the street where this mother and daughter live, and there's a couple trailers and another house, but that's about it. There's only 14 people to live in this little town in the middle of the desert. And S.S. Wilson and Brett Maddock wrote this script, and S.S. Wilson got the idea for this. He was in the Navy, and he was working out in the desert of California, and he was resting on this rock, and it came to him. He goes, what would happen if something was underneath the ground not allowing me to leave, and I was stuck on this rock? And that's how the first genesis of an idea came for this film, which I think is pretty cool. Now, like I said, when this movie got released, it only made 16.6. Now, when it hit the VHS rental market, it tripled its gross on the VHS rental market than it did in the theaters. It made a lot of money on the rental market. And at the time of the release of this film, Kevin Bacon felt like this is a low for his career. He didn't think the movie was going to do well or be well received, and he really was disappointed that he even did the film. Now, today, he likes the film, and he considers it one of his best and most fun time on a movie set. But back then, he had a very different view of this film, unfortunately. And basically, this movie's set in this little town of Perfection. We meet Val and Earl in the beginning of the film, and they're kind of the town's handymen. They mend fences for people. They pump out septic tanks for people. They help out wherever they can. That's how they make their money. And they even talk about how they've been trying to get out of town for years, but they end up staying. And they're talking about making a change and just moving into Bixby, which is the closest bigger town from them. Because their town's kind of shut off. It's surrounded by mountains. There's like one road in and one road out, and that's it. Which they get cut off pretty quick. Now, we don't see the monsters until 32 minutes in, at least a full monster. We only see like the tentacles that are snake-like creatures that come out of its mouth. And we don't even see that for like at least 20 minutes. People get taken. They get sucked down into the ground, and we don't know what it is. And it's well shot. Ron Underwood does a nice job with some of the shots and hiding the creature until it was time to show it, and I really appreciate that. I even appreciated it back then. he really pulls it off. It's not that this movie's scary. It's a little creepy, and it's not overly gory. It just shows you some aftermaths of the kills, like people move back a hat, and there's some guts or blood or brains there, but it's not overly gory at all. And most of the gooey ickiness of it comes from when the creatures get killed. That's pretty much it. This movie isn't about the gore. It's more about these creatures, and these people have to deal with it and figure out a way to get away from them before it tears out the town. These creatures tear out the town from underneath them. And once the town's cut off, and Walter Chang gets killed in his store, and they're up on the roof. Ron is on the water tower, and Bert and Heather are trapped on the roof of their house. But there's a cool scene in their basement because they're survivalists. They have a whole wall full of guns, and the one creep graboid breaks through their wall, and they must shoot this thing like 100 times, and they finally kill it. And we have graboid action left and right once the story really kicks in. And they decide they're going to take the cat, this front end loader, and since all the vehicles are pretty much dismantled, they can't use any of them because Bert and Heather's vehicle gets destroyed by the graboids. Which that Ford Bronco at Bert and Heather's is actually Michael Gross's was his real vehicle in real life at the time. So they take everybody in this trailer and they drag them up to. They figure if they get up to the mountains where the rocks are, they figure out that these creatures can't move through rock. They can only move through the loose soil in the valley. But unfortunately, on their way, the creatures set a trap, and they basically have to run from the trailer onto these rock formations because the cat won't go any further. And at the end, they kind of outsmart the graboids using explosives, and Valentine realizes that the explosives hurt these creatures and makes them go fast in an opposite direction. And he has it chase him to this cliff that goes into this deep valley, like deep crevice. And he throws it behind it. It speeds up. He jumps out of the way, and it goes off through the ground, off this cliff, and it dies on these rocks below. And that's how they kill the creatures. Rhonda and Valentine kiss at the end, and we have a happy ending because there is a little bit of flirtation between these two characters throughout the film. And Rhonda becomes a main character once she gets in with the group. But at first, she's just kind of like this outsider. It's just there from the college monitoring these machines to see seismic activity in the area. Now, this movie's really well shot. It's really well paced. It's really well written. The effects are spectacular. And I love the acting. All these actors look like they lived there. Like this town feels lived in. These actors, like the actors they chose, they're not supermodels. They don't look like they just walked off the pages of GQ. They look like real people. And that's important to sell this film because it takes place in an isolated little town in Nevada. And you can't have really good-looking people walking around. It'll look fake as hell. And I really appreciate that. And attention to detail here, I just think it's really smartly written. And they explain a lot away with some of these things, like where these creatures may have come from. Like Earl thinks they came from outer space because he goes, there's no way these are local boys. And Rhonda's like, well, they definitely predate the fossil record. But then she's like, she even makes kind of a joke of herself, like, yeah, and we haven't found one until now. Like, there's no way that's possible. These creatures have been around and we haven't noticed them or found one. And I really like how they put that in there. So they put doubt in the viewer's mind of where these creatures possibly could have came from. And I just, like, again, I love this cast. I love this movie. I've always loved it. I saw this when I was 12 years old, renting it with my friends. I absolutely loved it since then, and I still love it to this day. I watched this again last night on Blu-ray. Besides having a fantastic transfer, it's just a fun creature feature that has a good cast, good writing, good effects, a great pace. It's short. It's an hour and 36 minutes long, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. And it's just a fun, really well-done creature feature, and it's a lot to say. I think this is a classic film. I love this film. I've always loved it. The sequels, I don't love so much. I've only ever saw 2 and 3. I never really cared for 2. And I know Michael Gross has stuck around for all these sequels. I've never cared for the sequels. I wish they would have did a direct sequel, bring Kevin Bacon back and Fred Ward. They never did that. But Kevin Bacon really didn't want nothing to do with this until they were talking about doing a TV series, which they ended up scrapping, unfortunately. But yes, Tremors is a great time. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. I would give Tremors a 9.5 out of 10. I love it that much, and I'm not ashamed to say it. Tremors, 9.5 out of 10. If you've ever seen Tremors, leave a comment down below. Let me know. I'll be back next week. I'm going to start doing a Nightmare on Elm Street film a week until we get through the whole series. I'm not going to do Freddy vs. Jason. I've already done that. If you want to see that, just scroll on down. You'll see it. But I'm going to do 1 through 6. Well, New Nightmare 2 and the remake eventually. And then I'll do a ranking video when we're all done. So we're going to about to have some goddamn fun with that. But until then, I hope everyone has a kick-ass weekend, and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.